Okay, yeah, so you're smiling, Jimmy. You like this upset.
Well, I'm happy.
Of course he's smiling because his guy won.
Red to blue, we like that. But Caitlin Shake is a tenacious campaigner. She's a friend. She's from Stratford, and she's a councilwoman. Then when they went through the redistricting process in Stratford, really was counted out and redistricted into a much tougher district. She ran there, and she won there. So she's proven she can win not only in Democratic districts and Republican districts, but fight for the people of Stratford. She ran for state representative. The deck was stacked against her, and she had an upset tonight, and she won the seat in Stratford, and she's the newest state representative from Stratford, and +1 for the Democrats so far tonight.
It's not official.
But yes, long way to go, and a lot of early votes to still be counted throughout the night. So we have a long way to go.
I'm also hearing that many towns are closing up for the night and finishing tomorrow.
They're just, they're packing it in.
What kind of amateurs they are. It's 9:30. We have a whole night to go.
Keep going.
I know, right?
Last thing with early voting, it's going to take a long time to count the early votes throughout the night and through tomorrow. This is the first time we've ever had early voting in the state of Connecticut, so it's something new for all of us, and we really will be counting these votes for hours and potentially a day or two to make sure that all those 740,000 people who voted early, that their votes are counted, and that can make all the difference in these tight races that we're hearing about. 740,000 people is a lot of people that voted for the first time through the early voting.
Early and absentee is a little under 50%, which is
a lot.
880,000, I think, right?
Well, that's right. 50% of those who voted last time. Now, we may exceed last time, and we may fall to 42% or something like that. But the point is that it's not a, it's not just, oh, you know, we usually every year say, oh, well, the absentee ballots. It's sort of like, you know,
these are real numbers.
Yeah, these are real numbers. But I also want to make the point that this Democratic win raises the question, do we have too many Democrats? Even if you're a Democrat, do we have too many Democrats in the State House?
Yes. Hold it there. Hold it there.
Even if you're a Democrat.
Demis agrees with you. Let's go out to Matt McFarland, though, and he is with Republican George Logan's camp. What say you, Matt? What's the feeling there?
Hi there, Cara. Well, George Logan's last stop on Election Day was at a polling place here in New Britain. You might recall he's breaking tradition, not doing that traditional election night watch party with his supporters. We're here at the Back Nine Tavern at Stanley Golf Course, where New Britain Republicans, they're watching their local races, the state races as well. So as for the Logan camp, though, he said he was feeling pretty good as we were getting last talked with him as the polls were starting to close just before 8 o'clock. Said he felt pretty good. He said basically this is a race. It comes down to if you want more of the same or change. You might remember 2 years ago he went off faced Johanna Hayes. Very close race, roughly about 2,000 votes separating the two. So he said he felt pretty good. He said he raised more money this time than he had in the past. He thought his message was resonating with folks. Key issues for him, inflation, jobs, the southern border. But he said now it's just going to come down to counting those votes to see if they can get over that hurdle, that close number that they had the last time. So now that's just something that we'll have to see as the numbers start to come in. For now, though, we are going to send it to Susan Raph, who's in Waterbury, where she's been following Johanna Hayes all day. Susan.
Matt, good evening from Waterbury. We are still waiting for results to come in. We do know that about maybe a handful of precincts are now reporting. This is a fairly large district, not the largest in the state, obviously, but there are 41 different towns in the 5th district, and that could be one of the reasons why it is going to take a while for those results to come in. In the meantime, we've had a chance to speak to people here, and certainly about Johanna Hayes, who's been cautiously optimistic about winning tonight, but she did feel very confident as we spoke with her earlier tonight. This is a very important race. She's now seeking her 4th term. She believes that people in this district will want her to go back to Washington. Reproductive rights have been a very big issue, not just in this race, but races all over the country, and especially in the presidential race. We spoke to voters today. They agree with that, and they feel that Connecticut needs to support someone who supports those rights. And as you heard from Matt McFarland, was it a telling sign that George Logan is not having a campaign event? Also, we do know that the RNC pulled some money from Logan's campaign for TV ads, so that might be telling, but we really don't know right now. We're just going to have to wait and see. Obviously, we saw Senator Chris Murphy announcing here tonight. That happened probably less than an hour after the polls closed, or roughly around that time. I think a lot of people were hoping that would be the case here tonight, but it is not. This is a hotly contested race. It was very close 2 years ago. And another thing is that the national Democrat Democrats would really like to win this seat, because Democrats need 4 Democrats to win tonight in order to take back the House of Representatives. We want to throw it back to you, and we will bring you an update as soon as we get more information.
Susan, thank you so much. And we are going to come out here now to talk to our analysts, because what we've been talking about as we look at the 5th District race, and one of the big problems Amanda Callahan has been on, is the biggest polling place in Torrington, the tabulators went down, and that caused some problems with people not being able to vote. Also, how long it's going to take to count these votes, right?
Right, so they're hand counting all the votes now in Torrington, and that's very significant, because the state rep race, Michelle Cook's state rep seat is a big challenge this year for her, and so that will affect that race. It will affect the Senate District 8, which is Lisa Seminara's race, and then it will certainly affect the 5th Congressional District with Johanna Hayes and George Logan.
Yeah. So, I mean, when people are going to say, what does that mean? They're broken. Does that mean votes aren't going to be... That's not the case. You think this is a voting issue that can be solved, just for the viewers at home?
They just have to hand count. It won't go. It didn't work through the machines mechanically, so they have to take one at a time and hand count them.
And there's a fail-safe procedure for that. That's where they put them in the other box, and they're able to hand count. Okay. Okay.
By their local officials, by their local Democratic and Republican officials and registrars of voters. So the local poll workers who have been there all day, they would be the one to remedy this.
And let's show some of the results, because we have from the 5th District what we have so far. Although you just mentioned Torrington is a big part of the 5th District, we're going to have to hand count those votes. But at last check, we've got Hayes now 56% of the vote, George Logan with 44%, and they're separated, I mean, just a little over 2,000 votes. It strikes me as we look at this, we've talked about how some of the races have come down to even 1 vote, but on these local races, this turning out the vote is so important, because these aren't huge margins.
The Torrington race is a really important race, and it's indicative. It's important because Michelle Cook there is a veteran state rep who, I was there walking with her doing doors. She knows everybody's dog, let alone everybody. And she has brought millions of dollars, disproportionately millions of dollars, to that district, and she's running up against a new, fresh-faced, very intelligent, popular, young 27-year-old Republican. So it's a very interesting race.
But let's add to that historically, in her last several races, she has had closer and closer races. Okay, so even though, I mean, I served with her, you know, I like her very much, but she has had very close races and closer each time, which means she's vulnerable, and Torrington is a very blue-collar community, so it has been shifting more in that direction, and that's why it's so significant.
Jimmy?
Yes, no, I agree. It has been a tougher community, and increasingly so throughout Torrington, and really throughout that Route 8 corridor down through the Naugatuck Valley. It's been tougher terrain for Democrats, and though Michelle has been a real leader in the State House and has done so much for the Torrington community, it's going to be a tough race. And so now with this polling issue, we may just have to wait a little bit longer through the night into tomorrow as the local election officials are hand counting those results.
We've been talking about national issues, but electric rates are really hurting Democrats in conservative districts like that one. And
everywhere
and also Poulos and Southington. Electric rates are a big deal.
Economy, a big issue, of course, across America, but right here in Connecticut, when they're trying to decide.
We win that issue here.
Yes, I door knocked with Michelle this summer, and it's true. She knew every single person behind every single door, and so that can make a difference in knowing your community and knowing the constituents across the community, so that if they've got issues, she's helping to help solve them, and is really person-to-person, block by block, built her campaign. But still, it's a tough district, and increasingly so, and so I'm interested to see what happens tonight with that result.
All right, thanks, guys. I want to go out now to Aya Galal, our Capitol reporter for our Hartford bureau chief. Aya, you've been covering the race of John Larson for us. I know we got to speak to Congressman Larson earlier, who's been in office since 1998. He seems pretty confident, but the polls are closed now. What are you seeing?
Hi, Cara. Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of optimism and positivity here. We're at Goodwin University. This is where Congressman John Larson's team is watching the results coming in. We're still waiting on those official results to come in. But after speaking with the congressman just about an hour ago, he's feeling optimistic about both the presidential race and his congressional race. He has been in office, like you mentioned, Cara, since 1998. He's currently serving his 13th term. When asked today about his priorities if reelected, elected. He says he wants to get Social Security enhanced and reformed. Republican Jim Griffin is running against Larson. He used to be a Democrat but is now a Republican, hoping to defeat Larson, which will not be easy. Griffin says he wants to take down the Federal Reserve. And so back here at Goodwin University, we are seeing a lot of optimism amongst Larson's team. We're still waiting on those official results to come in. Of course, we're going to be monitoring things very closely. For now, reporting live in East Hartford, Aya Galel, Channel 3 Eyewitness News. We'll send it back to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much, Aya. And we want to head out now to the 2nd congressional district race. It's a district that covers a huge portion of the eastern part of our state. And Democrat Representative Joe Courtney and Republican Mike France both are after that seat. Channel 3's Luke Hydash is there with an update. I know you've been covering some voting irregularities in North Stonington. Of course, this is also submarine territory. So what are you hearing tonight, Luke?
Cara, good evening. There's, of course, a lot to talk about in the 2nd District. And a second ago, you were just talking about how big this area is. This is the largest district in Connecticut. It stretches from Enfield south to Madison and everywhere east over to the Rhode Island border. So this is a big chunk of the state that we're talking about. And with that comes a lot of time to get in all of the results tonight because you have so many different towns and cities that are reporting. Right now, less than 10% of the vote is in, which is why we have not heard from Joe Courtney yet. His team says usually in the past at this point of the night, he'll have come out and perhaps had said something or spoken with supporters. He did come out here and shake a few hands and say hello to a few of his supporters about 20, 30 minutes ago or so. But we have not had a speech from him yet. And although his campaign is very optimistic, he is not declaring victory quite yet. Mike France, his Republican challenger, we caught up with him earlier in the day. He said that he attacked this campaign a little bit differently than the last time he ran against Joe Courtney back in 2022. His campaign is hosting an event tonight up 395 in Danielson. But again, here in Norwich, we are waiting for more results to come in, as is the campaign for Joe Courtney before he comes out and says anything and before they make any type of victory call. But a lot of optimism for the Courtney campaign tonight. We are live in Norwich. Luke Hydash, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Luke, thank you. I want to come back out to our analysts here as we're watching everything that's happening. Of course, Luke is in that 2nd district where we've been talking about some of those voting issues. There's 1,000 envelopes that need to be signed that weren't, so we're watching that. But, you know, Connecticut, when we talk about the national race, it's already been called for Kamala Harris, and it's easy to dismiss us as just a blue state. But you were saying from managing as you were managing the Republican Party and going throughout the whole state, and all of you, that it's really it's more complex than sometimes people think of it.
There are so many different pockets in Connecticut that are Republican, Democrat. You know, I know Jimmy mentioned, you know, the Route 8 corridor, the Naugatuck Valley is very Republican. It's turned that way. We've talked about Torrington, you know, how that's gone. You know, we've seen how Greenwich has shifted the other direction. You know, when I was leader, managing 72 members, and you'd have some that, you know, were completely to the right, some that were more moderate and came from different parts of the state. And Eastern Connecticut is much different than Western Connecticut. That's different from Central Connecticut. And it's a very different state. It's much more diverse than people think. You know, you have the Western and Southern part that are very New York centric. I always tell the story when I went to college at Trinity College. My parents moved me in and got everything set up. My parents went home and I go, Dad, something's wrong with the TV. Because I got Channel 3 and I got Channel 8 and I got all these channels that I'd never really heard of before because we always had New York stations, right? Because we were in New York market. And it's just interesting that it's such a diverse state in that way, and it matters politically.
Yeah. And Jimmy, I'm even thinking the west end of Hartford, which some people would certainly call a more liberal area. But even as I drive through the west end of Hartford, you will see Trump signs, and you certainly see more Harris signs. But it's not like people aren't putting up the other side.
Right. No, absolutely. Hey, we're Connecticut, and we're in New England. We have that Yankee independence about us. People do ticket split, and so they might vote for one party on one piece of the ballot, but maybe move to the other party for another part of the ballot. I always say 169 towns, we have no county government. It wasn't that long ago across our 5 congressional districts that we only had 2 Democratic members in John Larson and Rosa DeLauro, and the other members of Congress were Republicans. So it's changed over time, but still, if you look at the state in all 169 towns, it's purple, it's red, it's not all blue. Statewide, yes, Kamala Harris won Connecticut, but when you really drill down and you look at the legislative races and the mayor's races, we really are have lots of red communities represented by Republicans in a lot of these small and medium-sized towns, as well as some Democrats as well. But it's not true just to say, you know, it's a blue state.
Real quick before we go to Stephanie, what about, I want you to chime in on this, but also how much of it's going to be a gender gap and that as far as turnout?
I don't know if there's a gender gap at the House and Senate level, certainly at the national level. Do you think there's a gender gap between the parties at the...
No, but I think it trickles down.
Well,
I mean, I think it trickles down, as we talked about regarding how Harris, how much she wins the state of Connecticut by. It will trickle down to the rest, but I don't think per se on the House and Senate level.
I think the bigger issue is whether we go to veto-proof majorities. Right now, let's do a little modeling here. You had 72, which was the recent high. The low was 37 House members.
We were the thundering 37.
The thundering 37. You were the assistant majority leader, deputy majority leader.
I was.
Right. And so if you go from 53 now, 54 now, to 49, which could happen tonight, that's a veto-proof majority. And that means that Governor Ned Lamont cannot stop that majority from breaking the cap on spending.
But I think I mean, listen, anything can happen. I think that's not likely. I think the Senate has more of a risk of doing that.
The Senate does, definitely.
More of a risk. I don't think it is a risk. I don't think it's a realistic risk in the House. I think, you know, we saw losing one member, and you're going to see somebody else beating somebody on the other side. So.
Okay.
I think it'll probably even itself out.
Okay.
Pretty strong numbers as it is, with Democrats in the Senate 24 and Democrats in the House 98, not including what happens tonight. So we might be up by 1 or 2. I'm not sure if we'll get to that kind of majority levels, but I think the Democrats might see an addition of maybe 1 or 2 on the whole.
We'll see what happens. But right now we're going to switch gears and head out to Stephanie Simone, who is watching our national board and see what's coming in. Of course, everyone wants to know. We've already talked to the folks out in Pennsylvania, where they're unfortunately a slow state. We're watching things come in. But what can you show us, as everyone wants every nugget of information right now?
Yes, Pennsylvania is a slow state. Of course, we're watching all of the states right now, and more of those results keep rolling in. Now, something that is worth noting is that the governor's race in North Carolina just got called. And it is with the Democrats. So anyways, right now, if you're looking at North Carolina, 62%, Trump won this in 2020. When we hit that 2020, it tells us that. That's what that button is there for. And it tells us exactly kind of how things are looking now. Right now, Trump is leading in North Carolina by 100,000 votes about, and 62% of the votes are in. So that is interesting and worth noting. I want to bring in our presidential historian, Professor Tom Balcerski. Thank you so much for being here once again. So let's talk about North Carolina. This is one to watch. This is something that Trump held on to in 2020. So where are we? What is of note to you here?
Yeah, so the places to watch are going to be, we'll start here in Mecklenburg County. Only 15% of the vote in. This is one of the largest population centers in the state. This is the city of Charlotte, and a growing part of the state of North Carolina. Zooming back out, we want to look at our research triangle, Wake, Durham, and Chatham counties. We want to sort of see how these 3 counties are going as well. Another big population center. The demographics of North Carolina are changing in the same way they're changing in Virginia. It's been slower to kind of decide which way it's going. So this one looks like a toss-up still, even as it leans Republican.
Of course, a lot of toss-ups still. I think it's going to be too close to tell with a lot of these states. Iowa is something worth noting, especially with the Seltzer poll that came out.
Yeah, the Seltzer poll really made waves over the weekend. Another one of these surprising moments coming into this race. Incredibly, she called the race by 3 points for Kamala Harris. There was like a 3% also margin for error. So we really don't know. But again, most of the population is over here in the Des Moines area. It speaks for itself. Kamala Harris is leading in the Des Moines metro area. There's a couple other population centers over this way that haven't reported in. So Iowa is still too early to call. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
But it does seem like the numbers are right now in favor of Vice President Harris.
Yes, but just 20% of the votes are in there. Georgia, President Biden took this in 2020. But right now, Trump is holding on to this very strongly with 2.2 million, and 79% of the vote is in.
And get Georgia credit. This was another one of these slow count states that actually made a big commitment to try to speed up their counting. It's actually impressive to see this number already, but still the same story. You have to look at Atlanta, the Atlanta suburbs.
Yeah,
that's going to decide
County
this
right
election.
here.
Probably is going to be the margins, and what we'll have to watch is how these margins change throughout the evening. The higher for Vice President Harris, the better in that area, whereas Donald Trump's lead holds in Georgia.
And Michigan was supposed to be called somewhat early, but they're slower to get their numbers in. In 2020, it went to Joe Biden, and right now just 14% are in, and you can see right now.
Well, and in Michigan, let's turn here to Wayne County. This is where the people live. This is the Detroit metro area between Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. This is really where we typically see the race falling in Detroit, whoever carries those three counties.
Yeah, and those Detroit typically, of course, going to Democrats typically. Now let's talk about the Senate race. We've been talking about this. But this could be a big night for Republicans in the Senate, especially with that Jim Justice win in West Virginia.
Yeah, it was a flip. It's just the one seat we can call right now. But as we may remember, the Senate has been tied for the last 2 years. Vice President Harris has been casting that tie-breaking vote for so many different votes. Of course, there are a couple independents in the Senate as well. So it really always sort of depends where folks end up caucusing on different issues. But as of now, this looks to be a major gain for the Republicans in the Senate.
And we will keep watching the House as well, but a lot of those numbers are not in, too close to call. So at this point, it's a little too early to look at those numbers. But of course, we'll keep watching this map, watching the balance of power for you all night long. Cara.
Yes. All right, Stephanie, thank you. I want to do a check-in on the 4th Congressional District right now. Representative Jim Hines is opposed by Republican Michael Goldstein. That district covers the southwestern portion of our state. So here's a look at the results that we have for you as of right now. Similar to the last time we showed you, Jim Hines is up a little bit more, 58% of the vote going to the incumbent Jim Hines. Michael Goldstein at 40%. And Benjamin Wesley much farther behind in the independent party with only 2%. Want to come back to our esteemed panel right now because I know you all chomping at the bit. You just got some new information that you're beating it into the newsroom. Tell everybody.
Okay, well, Themis just got the word that Representative Cara Rochelle, who represents a part of the Naugatuck Valley, we've been talking about the Naugatuck Valley here, I'm sure because we both love it, because Themis and I are both from the Naugatuck Valley, but Cara Rochelle.
We're all Valley.
Yes, we're Valley.
We are.
You're Valley people.
You're Valley
we
team,
are.
Cara.
Can't change it, but Cara Rochelle won her re-election, which I did think was going to be a tight race. We've been talking a lot about the Naugatuck Valley. We've been talking about Trump voters and them doing very well in the Route 8 corridor and throughout the Naugatuck Valley, but Cara Rochelle, state representative in Derby and Ansonia, did win tonight and upset and beat the mayor of Ansonia was running for that seat as a Republican, and Cara Rochelle did beat David Cassetti.
Well, the mayor of Ansonia is a 10-year mayor. And Ansonia, who wins by large margins, and it's just like literally you talk about knowing everybody's dog. I mean, he knows every person.
I gotta leave it right there. We've got 5 seconds, but you can watch the results streaming at the bottom of the screen. We'll be right